Hello, ladies and gentlemen. For those of you who are members of government-defined benefit pension schemes, think about this. What is a Ponzi scheme? A Ponzi scheme is a fraudulent investment operation where the operator generates returns for older investors through revenue paid by new investors, rather than from legitimate business activities or profit from financial trading. Think about what a defined benefit pension scheme does. It takes money from current public servants or new investors and uses it to fund redemptions, benefit payments to retired public servants, old investors. Sounds pretty Ponzi scheme-like to me. Bernie Madoff did this sort of thing. We know where he ended up. Anyway, I've been a member of a government-defined benefit super scheme for 17 years now, contributing at a high rate most of those years, bringing my pension pot up to around 4.5 times my salary. I've done the calculations, and at a conservative rate of growth of Bitcoin, the value of my Bitcoin holdings, even if I don't add $1 more to them, whilst continuing to contribute at 10% to my pension scheme, my Bitcoin holdings will equal the value of my pension pot in well under 5 years' time. That's simply incredible, life-changing returns, and I'm using very conservative figures and not including my Bitcoin solar mining operations, which will start early next year. Hedge fund managers, smarter, more experienced and much better connected than myself, are projecting Bitcoin to reach 25% of the gold market by next year. And if that happens, my Bitcoin holdings will surpass my pension pot by this time next year. And we're only just getting started, with less than 15 million Bitcoin wallets downloaded globally, representing a tiny 0.38% of internet users. If the Bitcoin market cap becomes on par with the gold market cap in the next 2 to 3 years, my Bitcoins will be worth over $2 million and will dwarf my government pension pot. If Bitcoin reaches values analysts like John McAfee, Tone Vays, Trace Mayer, Tom Lee, Ronnie Moas, Winston Sasaris, Saxo Bank and Jeremy Liu are predicting, we're talking about valuations between $100,000 to $9.5 million for 3 Bitcoins in a time period of 5 to 10 years, with most of the value occurring in the next 3 to 5 years. If James Altucher is right, we're talking $260 trillion of demand for money out there. So the $242 billion market cap of Bitcoin in Australian dollars will have to go much, much higher. That's 1,091 times increase from 242 billion to 260 trillion, by the way. All those figures are Australian dollars. I never thought that I would find a better investment than my guaranteed Australian government pension scheme, money for the rest of my life. But here we are, as this new technology is eating the old world order exponentially. And as each day passes and more users around the world pile in, Bitcoin by design grows stronger, more secure, less volatile. The difficulty of mining gets consistently harder, whilst demand continues to soar to own it from those who currently don't. So, is Bitcoin a Ponzi scheme? No. It's completely decentralized, with no central operator and no one individual or group in control. Consensus is the name of the game. Now everyone has to agree for improvements, code updates, forks, etc. The returns are not based on revenue paid by new investors. The growth in the value of Bitcoin is based on an ever greater user base, as well as speculation, of course. So is Bitcoin a pyramid scheme then? Well, no. Pyramid schemes are quite seductive because they may be able to deliver a high rate of return to a few early investors for a short period of time. Fractional reserve banking is a pyramid scheme, and it's been going on strong for well over a century now. Just because it's a scam doesn't mean that it can't be profitable for a few select individuals. Yet both pyramid and Ponzi schemes are illegal for the rest of us who don't possess a money printing press, because they inevitably must at some point fall apart. No program can recruit new members forever because a digital asset, currency, payment system like Bitcoin, as it gets more and more users, it becomes more useful, more valuable, more durable, more scarce, and the network gets more secure. The Bitcoin pyramid can't collapse because there is no pyramid. Bitcoin is a pyramid or Ponzi scheme as much as the world's 180 plus government decreed fiat paper currencies are pyramid and Ponzi schemes. Except with Bitcoin, it gives power and control to the people and takes it away from the central banks and governments of the world who have now lost their monopoly control over the issuance of currency. And thus, a large part of their power and control over the populace is now under great threat. The greatest threat ever in the history of humanity, and we're alive to witness it and be a part of it should we choose to be. Do not underestimate what this means for the people of the world, and do not be under any illusions. This movement is unstoppable. It cannot be shut down by anyone. This level of freedom has never before been possible, and it's firmly within our grasp. In a Bitcoin economy, war becomes impossible to finance. Think about how much of a potential threat this poses to the military-industrial complex of the United States of America, and of course, every other country's defense forces. When the benefits and incentives on offer are much greater to go the Bitcoin route rather than the government-issued paper currency route, you will see more and more people choose the Bitcoin route instead, as it gives them much more freedom and control over their lives, and freedom is what drives humanity, especially men, the builders and creators of almost everything important that we have. Anyway, defined benefit pension schemes are much more Ponzi or pyramid-like than Bitcoin, yet you won't hear many people say that now, will you? No, you will not. Look at the math of them carefully and compare them to the math of Bitcoin. I think you'll find that an eye-opening exercise. Next year, we will see the big institutional investors, the pension fund managers, the hedge fund managers, and the like come into the Bitcoin market and start buying large amounts of it, which will be very difficult for them to do because large amounts of Bitcoin are not available, as those holding Bitcoin will refuse to sell it, as they know full well how much higher it will go on the balance of probabilities. At the moment, there is very little institutional investment in Bitcoin, but that's going to change in 2018. Many financial advisors will tell their clients, buy one Bitcoin, and I suspect the price may hit 52,000 Australian dollars per Bitcoin by this time next year, just as other analysts have suggested. 100,000 users signing up a day at Coinbase. That's 36.5 million people a year signing up. That's simply incredible, and this boom is going worldwide. So these numbers will look tiny as the rich, poor and middle classes of India, China, Japan, Indonesia, Pakistan, Africa and Russia join in to bypass their banking systems, and in the case of the smaller developing countries, bypass their tin pot dictator government's control. When big societal shifts like this occur, You often hear about them through the alternative news media or word of mouth first, and then, before you know it, you look around and it appears that all of a sudden everyone is in on it, using the technology or suffering from the collapse of the economy. Think about how quickly smartphones and the web happened in comparison to other technologies, and think how quickly countries like Venezuela, Argentina, Greece, and Zimbabwe went to shit. Looking at the numbers and taking into account price predictions from people smarter, more experienced, and much better connected than myself, it looks like Bitcoin will become my best investment by far and will leave my government-defined benefit pension plan in the dust in less than 2 years. And that's still with less than 20 million Bitcoin wallets in existence and less than 5 million users out of a possible 4 billion globally who are on the internet and who need a digital currency and or digital gold. It's an interesting proposition to invest in Bitcoin for a government employee like myself. On the one hand, if Bitcoin succeeds wildly as digital gold or a store of wealth and or a better, faster, cheaper payment system, which is looking probable with the Lightning Network to come, which will allow millions of Bitcoin transactions per second, leaving Visa and MasterCard with their 50,000 odd transactions a second in the dust. Governments globally will have very serious problems with raising revenue and taxing citizens if this succeeds, as everyone refuses to use fiat or government-issued digital currency in favor of Bitcoin, or they get rid of their fiat or government digital currency as quickly as possible to buy Bitcoin. Will governments panic? They might. Will this negatively affect the value of our defined benefit pension plans? Probably. I, for one, will be lowering my contributions and increasing my Bitcoin mining, and other cryptocurrency investments, so my actions are already causing less money to be paid into the pension scheme. On the other hand, if Bitcoin succeeds wildly, those government employees like myself who own it will do exceptionally well. But what if, in a few years' time, our government decrees because they and every other government on earth can't control or shut down Bitcoin, and it's sucking in so much of the world's money and liquidity that Australian public servants must not own Bitcoin? It would become a much better proposition to quit and walk away from the public service if a public servant's Bitcoin holdings are worth much more than their pension pot, as they could access that money now instead of at 55. And if they wanted to, they could, perhaps to reduce risk, simply sell some of their Bitcoin, buy index funds or property with it, or just cash out small amounts of it and live overseas in the developing world in comfort for the rest of their lives. Interesting times we live in, my friends. If my father was alive today and I explained to him what's going on, he would be stunned and would right away grasp the opportunity to be free of the banking system and go off much of the financial grid. Get into Bitcoin mining. He'd grasp it with both hands. The possibility of bringing the family up to levels of prosperity he could have only imagined is now possible. Since he's not with us anymore, that job has fallen to me, his eldest son, to lead the family in this. Good thing for myself and the family, I inherited his intellect and his work ethic. His work ethic was more important, by the way. If the experts are right and Bitcoin does become worth as much as the global gold market, I will be taking off at that point to the developing world to help people full time to get on board with this incredible technology. This year, I've done very well out of Bitcoin, Monero, Ethereum, Stellar, Golem, and other cryptocurrencies, but it has not made me any happier. There's a big lesson here as to what's really important in life: helping other people. And that, my friends, is exactly what I plan to do. Until next time, all the best. I'm Clarke Towson, CEO of INTJ.